Love is rarely wrapped in the neat, polished boxes we wish for. It's messy, it's complicated, and sometimes it's confusing. One of the most heartbreaking patterns we notice in relationships is when someone who loves us deeply starts pulling away, acting distant, becoming unrecognizable. And we wonder, how can someone who claims to love me so much also be the one who ignores me the most? It's easy to label it as manipulation or rejection or even indifference. But the truth is much more layered. Sometimes the one who loves you a lot ignores you a lot because their own heart is full of noise, fear, shame, insecurity, or a history they've never truly unpacked. Real love doesn't just bring joy, it brings exposure. It strips us of the emotional masks we've worn for years. For someone who has never felt safe being emotionally open, this sudden feeling of closeness can be disorienting. It's like being asked to stand in the middle of a brightly lit room after years of hiding in the shadows. That kind of vulnerability feels dangerous, even when it's being invited by kindness. When a person truly loves you, they are no longer playing a role. They are showing you their real self. And for many, that's terrifying. Vulnerability requires us to put our guard down, to risk being hurt, rejected, or misunderstood. It asks us to trust someone with the most fragile parts of our soul. And if we've been hurt before or never learned how to trust, this is overwhelming. So what do some people do when they start to love deeply? They retreat. They ignore. Not because the love is absent, but because the fear is louder than the feeling. They pull back to protect themselves, mistakenly believing that emotional distance equals emotional safety. They convince themselves that silence or coldness will prevent pain, when in truth it often creates it. This is the paradox. The more they feel for you, the more exposed they feel to you. And instead of leaning in, they lean out, not because they want to lose you, but because they're afraid loving you too openly means they eventually will. That fear can silence even the loudest hearts. One of the most silent, haunting fears a person can carry into a relationship is the belief that they're not enough. Not smart enough, not successful enough, not attractive, interesting, emotionally stable, or together enough. This fear doesn't always scream, it whispers quietly in the back of their mind. And when someone they deeply love enters their life, that whisper becomes a roar. See, the deeper they care, the more they start to panic. What if I mess this up? What if they see the real me and walk away? What if I can't give them what they need? And instead of leaning in with courage, they begin to emotionally retreat. They ignore texts, avoid meaningful conversations, downplay their feelings, not because they don't care, but because they care so much they can't risk falling short. This fear of inadequacy is rarely logical. It's rooted in past experiences, internalized criticism, and deep emotional wounds. Maybe they grew up in a home where love was conditional, or they've been in relationships where nothing they did was ever good enough. So now when they love you, they project those fears onto your connection. They assume you'll eventually find someone better, and they try to create distance before they get hurt. Ignoring becomes their way of managing expectations. They think, if I detach, maybe I won't disappoint them. If I'm not fully in it, I can't fully fail. But what they don't realize is that this very behavior, this self-protection, creates the distance they're trying to avoid. The tragedy here is that someone can love you wholeheartedly and still believe they're unworthy of your love in return. And so they hold back, not because they want to hurt you, but because deep down they believe they're the one who's bound to cause pain simply by being who they are. This is not an excuse, it's a lens. Because the truth is, someone who doesn't believe they are enough will never be able to show up for you the way they want to. Not until they confront that belief within themselves. And loving someone isn't just about grand gestures or poetic words. It's about emotional presence. It's about being able to sit with the storms of your own heart and someone else's without running away. But for many people, especially those who weren't taught how to navigate their emotions growing up, this is incredibly hard. They were raised in homes where feelings were silenced, where stay strong meant stay quiet, and where emotional outbursts were punished rather than understood. So now, as adults, they find themselves overwhelmed when big feelings come up, especially in love. Love doesn't just bring butterflies, it brings uncertainty, longing, fear of loss, vulnerability, joy, and even grief, and all of that can come crashing in at once. If a person hasn't developed emotional regulation, meaning the ability to notice, process, and respond to feelings instead of reacting impulsively, they'll default to their oldest coping mechanism, shut down. And shutting down often looks like ignoring you. It may appear cold or careless, but what's happening inside is far from calm. They're emotionally flooded, mentally spinning, and silently panicking. But instead of telling you, I'm overwhelmed, they vanish into silence. Instead of saying, I need time to think, they distance themselves without explanation. Not to punish you, but because they don't know how to express what's going on inside. This can be deeply painful for the person on the receiving end. You feel invisible, confused, unloved. But the truth is, their withdrawal is not always about you. It's about their own inability to manage the depth of what they're feeling. They love you, but they don't know how to show up when things get heavy. And unfortunately, love that's not emotionally supported quickly becomes love that's emotionally unavailable. This doesn't mean you should tolerate emotional immaturity, but it helps explain the pattern. Some people don't ignore you because they want distance. They do it because their internal world is louder than any conversation you could have. Until they learn to sit with their feelings without running from them, they'll continue to struggle with being present, no matter how deep their love goes. In a world that often glorifies emotional detachment, many people grow up with a warped understanding of what strength looks like in relationships. They're taught to be cool, to not catch feelings too fast, and to never let anyone see you sweat. Vulnerability is labeled as weakness, and affection, especially when it's consistent and open, is seen as giving someone else too much power. So when they find themselves truly loving someone, instead of leaning in, they pull back. Not because they want less of you, but because they think loving loudly makes them weak. They fear being labeled as needy or too available. They think if they respond too quickly, care too deeply, or show up too often, they'll lose the upper hand, and with it, their sense of control. This belief leads them to play a dangerous game of emotional hide and seek. They start ignoring texts, postponing calls, avoiding deep conversations, not to create space for reflection, but to maintain the illusion of strength. But the truth is, that kind of distance doesn't make love stronger, it makes it colder. And love that turns cold starts to die, no matter how strong it once was. This mindset is often inherited. Maybe they watched a parent shut down emotionally and call it being strong. Or they've been in relationships where showing love became a weapon used against them. So now they equate silence with power. They believe that being emotionally distant keeps them safe and in control. But here's what they haven't learned yet. Real strength and love doesn't come from withholding affection. It comes from giving it even when it scares you. It comes from sending that message, making that call, showing up even when your pride wants you to wait. Strength is not in the silence, it's in the willingness to be seen. Until they recognize that distance isn't strength, it's fear in disguise, they'll keep sabotaging their own happiness. They'll keep pushing away the very thing they want most. And the sad part, they don't even realize that by trying to look strong, they're actually building walls between them and the love that could heal them. One of the most profound reasons someone may ignore the person they love is because they're not just loving you. They're still reacting to everyone who came before you. Their past isn't in the past, it's alive in how they behave, how they protect themselves, and how they relate. You may have done nothing to warrant the coldness or withdrawal, but you're still paying for wounds you didn't cause. Maybe they were once deeply in love, and that love ended in betrayal. Maybe they opened their heart to someone who used their vulnerability as a weapon. Or maybe they were abandoned at a crucial moment, emotionally or physically, and never fully processed it. Those unresolved stories don't just disappear. They take up residence in the nervous system, in the way we attach, in the way we interpret closeness. So now when they feel something real with you, it doesn't feel peaceful, it feels dangerous. Their body remembers heartbreak even if their mind doesn't. Love begins to feel like a setup, like history preparing to repeat itself. And so, rather than risk experiencing that same pain again, they go numb, they withdraw, they distance themselves before you have a chance to do it first. This isn't because they don't care. It's because they care so much it hurts. It feels safer to sabotage the connection than to wait helplessly for it to collapse. In their eyes, they're protecting themselves from another emotional crash. But what they don't realize is that they're also hurting you, and in the process, slowly unraveling something that could have grown into something beautiful. This is how trauma loops silently play out in relationships. Old pain shows up dressed as new caution. Old betrayal shows up as new silence. Their heart might be present with you, but their guard is still in battle with someone from their past. And until they do the inner work to separate then from now, they'll continue to love through a fog. A fog where every present moment is colored by past fear, where you can love them fully, but they'll only receive it halfway. It's a hard truth. Someone can love you and still be emotionally unavailable because their past hasn't let them go. And unless they choose to confront those wounds, love will always feel like walking on thin ice, even when the sun is shining. The loved is the one feels the most confusing because it's the one we least expect. We often associate distance or emotional withdrawal with lack of love, but sometimes it's actually the depth of love that terrifies someone the most. When a person feels something so strong, so real, so overwhelming, their first instinct isn't always to hold it tight. Sometimes it's to run from it, not because the love is wrong, but because it feels too right, and that kind of emotional gravity can be paralyzing. You see, when someone has gone through life keeping their emotions in check, carefully managing expectations and building walls to protect themselves, falling in love doesn't feel like a beautiful surrender. It feels like losing control. Suddenly someone else holds emotional power. Someone else can hurt them. Someone else can leave. And the more they love you, the more that fear grows. And they start to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. What if you change your mind? What if you see through them? What if you love them now, but not forever? Their mind spirals with what ifs, each one feeding their need to back away before they get in too deep. The fear of being hurt becomes louder than the desire to connect. So they ignore you, not because they want distance, but because they don't know how to hold love that big. They worry that if they allow themselves to fully show up, they'll be left exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. And maybe in the past, that's exactly what happened. So now, as their heart reaches for you, their fear pulls them back. They might try to convince themselves they're doing the right thing. They might rationalize the distance as protecting the relationship or not rushing things. But what's really happening is emotional self-sabotage. They're scared of how much they need you, scared of how deeply they care. And instead of expressing that fear, they go silent, they hide behind indifference. But underneath the quiet is a heart that's screaming, please don't hurt me. This kind of love, one rooted in both desire and terror, is hard to witness because on one hand, you feel how deeply they care. On the other, you're forced to feel the ache of their absence. And the heartbreaking part is that love this intense could be transformative if they were brave enough to lean into it. But without courage, even the deepest love will fold under the weight of fear.